This is the Cyber Brisket Podcast, serving up what's hot in IT so your business doesn't get cooked.
All right, today's guest is Rob Allen, Chief Product Officer at ThreatLocker and a cybersecurity expert with over 30 years of experience in IT. Rob started his career on the technical side as an engineer and system administrator before becoming a trusted advisor to hundreds of businesses, helping them navigate technology and security challenges. Today, he leads product innovation at ThreatLocker and is widely recognized for his work on ransomware response and helping organizations build stronger, more proactive cyber defenses. Rob, welcome to the Cyber Brisket Podcast.
Thank you, Chris. Good to be here. And I'm not going to lie, saying 30 years of experience makes me feel really old. But it's probably accurate, unfortunately.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that for you, but I may not have 30 years of experience, but I think you might have more hair than me, so you're doing pretty good.
Well, in some places.
Well, very good. So I prepared a few questions to ask you here today, and so I'm just going to kick this off right now.
Sure.
You've been on the front lines of ransomware response. What are the most common mistakes you see SMBs making today that leave them exposed?
Well, how long do we have?
All right.
Well, I suppose I'll speak to you a little bit about my experience first of all. So thankfully, of late, and by of late I mean since I joined ThreatLocker, there's less response to ransomware required because fundamentally our job at ThreatLocker is to stop these things from happening. I mean, I can speak to my experience pre-ThreatLocker, which was dealing with quite a lot of ransomware events. Thankfully, in those days, which is sort of pre-2021, pre-2020, a lot of ransomware was effectively just destructive. So it was encrypting files, and basically our job, I worked for an MSP at the time, our job was pretty much to clean up after it. So it was restoring from backup. I mean, if you'd asked me back then what the most effective way to protect yourselves against ransomware was, I would have probably said having numerous backups. So backups of backups of backups, and realistically, if there's enough of them, you're probably going to be okay. It's not that big a job to recover. The game changed though, and it was really interesting because it changed for me literally the week that I left that company and came to join ThreatLocker. And it was the usual scenario, which is I got a phone call from one of my clients, 8 a.m. on a Monday morning saying, I can't get into my files. Can you have a look? So I logged in, discovered pretty quickly what was going on. They were basically under attack, managed to get it shut down and stopped relatively quickly. So it was, I think they had a couple of servers, like they maybe 13 or 14 servers. They 2 servers were encrypted. So it was pretty much a recovery job. But the really interesting thing, and this is why I think the game changed for me at that point, was the ransom note that was left behind was unlike anything I'd seen previously. And it wasn't just we've encrypted your files, pay us and we'll give you a key. It was we've encrypted your files, pay us and we'll give you a key. And oh, by the way, also we've uploaded 1.6 terabytes of your data and we're going to start leaking it on this day, on this time. Now, I'd never seen that before at this stage. So it was literally the first time I'd ever had any experience of what's now called double extortion, which is basically encryption and exfiltration. And from my perspective, that just changed everything because it meant that backups were no longer enough. It was not good enough to be able to get people back up and running in the event of something happening, because the reality is their data has probably been stolen at the same time. And that, as I said, that was just such an eye-opener for me. It completely changed my way of looking at things. And as I said, it was ironic that it coincided literally to the week with my leaving that company and coming to join ThreatLocker, where, as I said, our ethos, our mission is to stop organizations being affected by these events. So it's not just about being able to recover if something goes wrong. It's far better off that you be proactive and stop it from happening in the first place.
Yeah, sure. I remember what you're talking about, where the number one defense against ransomware was backup. And that's just such a terrible reactionary measure.
To be honest, at the time, broadly speaking, it was fine. I mean, like, look, and for a variety of reasons, that companies. So we looked after maybe 200 businesses around Ireland. And for a variety of reasons, including, and I won't even get into it because it's a really messy story, but elevated privileges, so users being local admins and macros being enabled in Word. Basically, they had more than their fair share of ransomware attacks that we used to deal with. So, I mean, probably somewhere between 12 to 15 on a yearly basis that we'd have to deal with. And generally speaking, it was just, I mean, the attackers, I don't want to say they weren't as advanced in those days, but 9 times out of 10, shadow copies was fine. Shadow copies was enough. I was able to restore data from shadow copies and they'd be back up and running within, 2 hours. I mean, that's not a massive issue. That's not a major disruption to, the type of organizations that we were dealing with. But as I said, and the other thing is we were dealing with a lot of legal firms. So we had a lot of legal customers. And the last thing you want for a legal customer is all of their data to be out on the dark web or in somebody's hands, basically, with them threatening to leak it. Because it's, look, I remember the conversation I had with that guy after we stopped that attack. And he basically said to me, look, do they have our data? And I was like, I don't know. Maybe not. I mean, I had no way of telling at the time. And again, it's not a great position to be in not to know. And look, as it turned out, in the long run, I don't think they actually did because nothing ever happened. Nothing ever got leaked. But as I said, that just very much changed the dynamic from this is something you can very easily recover from to this is something you really should be protecting yourself against.
Sure, yeah. So maybe they're just saying that they exfiltrated it and just hoping that they get an extra payday.
There was actually a hint to that in the ransom note, which was they did say, look, we've stolen this amount of data, but there was basically a link, a gap where they were able to put where it was going to be released on this day and this time. And the gap was empty. So it's like, we're going to release it to at this day and this time. So the fact that they hadn't bothered to fill that in led me to believe that maybe they didn't actually have their hands on that data. And again, there was other factors as well. So timing, when they got in, when they started it, that kind of stuff. Again, it all led back to maybe they don't. But again, the fact is, today, you can be pretty sure they will. I mean, something like 90% of ransomware attacks also include data exfiltration. So it's gone from, this is the first time I've ever seen it happening to it basically happens every time now.
And then adding on to how backups are more or less not the answer, I'm reminded about how some people were telling us how folks will put a foothold in there, or cyber criminals, they'll put a foothold in there, and then the foothold just gets backed up along with everything else. And so then you restore your backup in maybe within a few hours or a few days, they're back at it.
Yeah, quite possibly. And again, look, there's other factors about it. Like, look, at the end of the day, I'm not giving out about backups. Everybody should have backups. Backups are really important for a huge number of reasons, but it's not a security strategy by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, another thing that a lot of people don't actually consider is that the easiest, fastest, and most effective way to exfiltrate large amounts of data from any organization is using backup software, because it's really unlikely to trip up any egress alarms. So if I'm using, X online backup provider, so I'm backing up my data to ThreatLocker.veeam.com. If I'm an attacker, it's not that difficult to change it from ThreatLocker.veeam.com to badguy.veeam.com. And I'm still uploading, broadly speaking, the same amount of data. It's just not going to the place that I expect it to go to. It's going to somewhere else. So it's another example of, so we've a part of our solution, which is called ring fencing, which is basically, it's like a firewall around an application saying, look, you can communicate with here, but you can't communicate with there, basically. And it's one of the reasons that ring fencing is so important. So you can say, look, I only want my backup software to be able to talk to ThreatLocker.veeam.com and nowhere else.
Sure. Good stuff. Here's the next question. There's a lot of focus on traditional security layers like antivirus and EDR. Where do you see those approaches falling short? And how should small businesses be thinking differently?
So layers are good. Layers are important, but layers are only really effective if they're not the same. And I mean, you mentioned two examples there, which is like antivirus and EDR. I mean, antivirus and EDR fundamentally are doing the same thing. They do them in slightly different ways, insofar as antivirus is, broadly speaking, interested in signatures, and EDRs are more interested in heuristics and behaviors and how things look and how they behave. But fundamentally, they are both looking for the same known threats, the same known bad things. And a lot of cases, they'll fall over each other when they do actually find them. Now, that's two examples. I mean, you can talk about everything else that ends with DR as well. Everything that detects and everything that responds, they're all detecting and responding to a limited set of known bad things. But what about unknown things? What about 0 days? What about things that I've never seen before? I mean, you can't respond to it if you can't detect it. If you can't detect it. So that's why our recommendation, or my recommendation when it comes to layers, is you should have different types of layers. Rather than having 3 or 4 different layers of detection, which, going back to your previous question, the biggest mistake that we see organizations make is having too many similar layers in play. As I said, very often falling over each other when they do actually find something bad. So the idea, and the best way to achieve layers and what would be described as a layered defense, is to have different types of layers. So have a layer of detection. Absolutely, you should have that. That should be your fallback position. But you should also combine that with a layer of control. So control and detection are two different approaches. It's proactive and reactive. I mean, you could describe it as left of boom and right of boom. Now, having both of those working in tandem gives you a much better outcome and gives you a much better, or much more secure position to be in, than having lots of layers defending, or lots of layers detecting, and lots of layers reacting. Because, as I said, you're going to get limited bang for your buck for that. But again, we have seen lots of organizations who have 2, 3, 4, 5, sometimes 6 different security tools. I mean, that's, in a lot of cases, that's 6 different agents running on machines. It's 6 different portals you have to log into on a daily basis. I mean, it's effectively unmanageable. But the main thing is, if all your layers are trying to detect and hopefully respond, that is, as far as I'm concerned, that is fundamentally doomed to failure, because nobody knows everything that's bad. Nobody knows all the bad things. Nobody knows all the tools. Nobody knows all the techniques. Nobody can detect every single bad piece of behavior. So that, as I said, brings around to the idea that zero trust is the way to go, which is that, look, I don't need to know everything that's bad if I block everything by default. I'm going to block all known ransomware. I'm going to block all unknown ransomware. I'm going to block all 0 days. I'm going to block all legitimate tools that can be misused. I'm going to block remote access tools that shouldn't be allowed to run on people's machines. I'm going to block things like Orclone, which attackers use for data exfiltration. I'm going to block AnyDesk, because that's the remote access tool of choice of ransomware gangs. As I said, if you block everything by default, it just simplifies the entire proposition of cybersecurity so much, because you don't need to know everything that's bad.
Sure. So the detection is more about trying to find things that have made their way onto your system.
Well, the detection is more as a fallback, or rather the way we see detection. And again, we do see detection as an important part of a well-balanced security stack. But in an ideal scenario, in an ideal world, you don't want detection to happen when something bad is underway, when something bad has happened, when something is running that shouldn't be running. You don't want to be detecting or depending on detection at that point. Ideally, you want to be detecting before something bad has had the chance to happen. So a really good example is, one of the first things that happens when an environment gets compromised, almost universally the first thing that happens when an environment gets compromised, is they will run an IP scanner of some description. So whether it's advanced IP scanner or angry IP scanner or Nmap or some sort of IP scanning tool, so they can get some sort of a picture of the network, see what else is out there. Now, we're going to block those things by default, because, again, blocking things is what we do. So unless there's a policy that says IP scanner can run or Nmap can run, those things are going to be blocked. But is it not much better that you find out about that when something gets blocked, and you can investigate and respond to it, rather than, okay, I'm an attacker, I've been able to run IP scanner, I've been able to move laterally to other machines, I've been able to basically do everything that I want to do up to the point that I'm running ransomware without anybody even noticing or knowing what's going on. I mean, fundamentally, if waiting for ransomware to run is your strategy and hoping to detect that and respond to that, again, back to the previous point, data exfiltration. I mean, realistically, data exfiltration will take place before ransomware gets a chance to run. So if your defense, if your strategy is, okay, I'm going to wait for ransomware to run and hopefully shut it down and stop it, fact is your data is probably already out there in the dark web at that point. And it's again, recovery cleanup operation. Whereas if you have those indicators, if you're looking for those indicators of compromise earlier in the process, and as I said, based on things being blocked rather than based on things being allowed to happen, you're going to be in a much better position.
And the difference between detection and control, just for the sake of the audience. So detection is reactionary. These are things that are now running on the computer versus having a white list of things that are allowed to run.
Correct.
And then denying everything else. Is that right?
Absolutely. So, I mean, fundamentally, everything or most of what we do is around control. So it's the control over what can run and what can't run. So what can run is what's explicitly been allowed, what there's policies in place to allow, and what can't run is everything else. That's a control. Ring fencing, I mentioned it earlier, that's a control. It's, okay, these applications are allowed to run. So PowerShell can run in my environment, but do I want PowerShell to have access to my management share or my finance share or my data in my documents folder? No, because it doesn't need access to that. Does it need to reach out to the entire internet? Again, PowerShell is such a great example because it's so widely misused. Again, 90+% of ransomware attacks will use PowerShell at some point in their execution. And look, if you're an attacker, it makes perfect sense to use it because it's on every Windows computer and you can do so much with it. You can exfiltrate data, you can run remote code, you can set up a reverse shell, you can basically, you name it. I mean, technically you can encrypt data and delete data. I mean, you can do everything that ransomware does using PowerShell. But interestingly, you can do everything that ransomware does using 7-zip or WinRAR. I mean, they have all the capabilities of ransomware, and you can encrypt data with WinRAR. So if you're, again, an attacker, I've got access to an environment, why would I go straight to the nuclear option of running ransomware, where technically I can encrypt all of your files into a single RAR or zip file that's, sure, got a password on it. I only know the password. You don't know what it is, and I can delete all your data. No ransomware required.
Do you see that? Do you see people using these, like,
we've seen
legitimate tools
being misused more than you can ever believe? I've seen putty being used for data exfiltration.
Wow.
Putty. I mean, putty is not a bad application, but
we
absolutely
use it.
We've seen it being misused. Again, zip. Things like 7-zip, things like WinRAR. Again, you have to put yourself in the position of the attacker in environments where we have our controls in place, which is I can't run ransomware. So if I can't run ransomware, then what am I going to do? Okay, well, here's these things that are sitting on the computer. Let's see which of them I can abuse. Well, okay, I can't abuse PowerShell because it can't reach out to the internet. It can't run scripts. It can't run, remote code. Oh, hang on a second. I see WinZip can run on this machine, or WinRAR, or 7-zip. So let me see if I can use that instead.
Wow. Very good. Here's another question. For for a small business that doesn't have a large IT team, what does a practical, achievable cyber resilience strategy actually look like today?
So, to the point about controls, there is another side to it. So obviously there are cybersecurity benefits to what we're talking about, which is ransomware can't run, bad things can't run, malware can't run. But there are other benefits to it as well. And again, I do speak to this from some amount of experience because of my previous life at the MSP. So we, as I said, used to look after organizations up and down the country. It was Ireland rather than the US, but same principle. And I know the pain of giving somebody a computer today and it's all singing, all dancing, super fast. They absolutely love it. It's everything they need and more. And then I get a phone call in 6 months going, my computer's running slowly. And then you log into the computer and you find that they've got 5 different toolbars and 15 different Chrome extensions and somehow have installed 3 different antiviruses on the machine. And they're going, my computer's slow. Well, it's slow because of all this crap that you've installed on it. So as I said, this is aside from the cybersecurity benefits. With ThreatLocker, basically, users are not able to do the stupid things that users would ordinarily be able to do that get them in trouble. I mean, I'll give you another perfect example of this, which is Danny, our CEO, and Sammy, our COO, basically, they used to look after, pre-ThreatLocker, they used to look after the IT in the school where their kids went. Now, it was actually one of the reasons why ThreatLocker was born, was because looking after the IT in the school where their kids went, they were constantly fighting with, malware, all manner of different software, all the crap people were installing. They were spending all of their time basically managing the school's environment.
And Lord knows the kids will find a way around everything.
Kids will find a way. Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've got whatever number of hackers out there, but you've got a load of hackers in here as well, is the problem. But the interesting thing was, so I fast forward 5, 6, well, actually probably 8 or 9 years, and I moved over here. And basically, my kids are now in the school that their kids were once in. Now, that school obviously now is running ThreatLocker. And basically, I said to Danny and Sammy, I said, look, there's no point in you looking after the IT for this school if your kids aren't even there anymore. I'll do it. I don't mind. It's, it's no skin off my nose. So anyway, long story short, I'm now managing the IT for this school that they used to manage with such difficulty, 7, 8 years ago. It's almost embarrassing how little work I have to do to manage the IT in this place, because again, nothing is running that shouldn't be allowed to run. Nothing is happening that shouldn't be allowed to happen. We actually have a new feature we've added to our portal recently, which shows you the amount of time that you spend managing an environment. And it's really, really sad. Like in this, I think genuinely it's about 20 minutes a month. And most of that is somebody tries to run a new piece of software. I need to check it out, make sure it's okay, and allow them to run it. But 20 minutes a month compared to pretty much constant struggles before. And it's just such a good example of the difference between an environment with no controls, which is what it was before, and an environment with appropriate controls, which is what it is now. I mean, there is another way to look at it, which is fundamentally everything that you can run on your computer right now. So think of your computer as an example. Everything you can run on that computer increases your attack surface. So if you can run TeamViewer, you've increased your attack surface. You can run AnyDesk, and again, multiply that by the almost infinite amount of software that's out there. So your attack surface is effectively infinite. Whereas if all you can run is Office and Teams and Zoom and browsers and, maybe 4 or 5 other applications, then your attack surface is, relatively speaking, quite small. Now, there's other benefits to it as well. So like if you only have, again, 10, 15 pieces of software that you can run, that's only 10 or 15 pieces of software you need to patch. So you don't need to worry in vulnerabilities in all of this random software. It also means, Chrome extensions. Chrome extensions are incredibly dangerous, and there's so many dodgy ones out there. Again, we treat Chrome extensions like executables. So if it's, again, allowed by or denied by default and permit by exception. So I can't run a Chrome extension on my machine unless it's been pre-approved, unless it's been vetted, unless somebody has made a decision to say, yes, this thing is okay and it should be allowed to run. But again, that's just a couple of examples of how control differs to detection and how control has other benefits over and above the cybersecurity ones.
Very good. Application control and least privilege are becoming bigger conversations. Why are those so critical right now, especially with modern threats like ransomware, like we've been talking about, and also living off the land attacks?
Well, as I said, living off the land is a huge, huge issue because it's so hard to detect. I mean, the difference between PowerShell doing something legitimate and PowerShell doing something bad is, I'm not going to say it's impossible to decide or to decipher, but it's not far off it. The other thing to bear in mind is obviously with the advent of AI and the fact that it is now documented, it is clearly known that attackers are using AI. Okay, the fact is there's latest estimates I've seen is somewhere close to 600,000 new pieces of malware released every single day. Now, the question is, how do you possibly keep up with that? How do you detect every single one of them? And the reality is you just can't. I mean, it is quite simply not possible to know everything that's bad. And it is only accelerating because, as I said, of the likes of AI. Add into that the risks that organizations are taking with running things like agentic AI. So look, I had a really funny conversation with a friend of mine back home 2 or 3 months ago, and he wanted me, and this was before OpenClaw had been bought by OpenAI, and he was like, "I want you to set up OpenClaw on my computer, on my main computer," and I was like,
No.
"Absolutely not! There is no way on God's earth that I am going to set up OpenClaw on your machine. That thing will probably clear out your bank accounts. It'll probably empty your whatever cryptos you got sitting around. I am not going to be responsible for that." But the interesting thing that has happened since then, and obviously OpenClaw is one example. The other conversations that we were having, and I was having with other customers that are customers of ours at that stage, is they were asking, "Are we running OpenClaw on any of our machines?" And at that point, it was a really simple answer, a really simple conversation, which is, did you explicitly allow OpenClaw to run on any of your machines? No. Well, then it's not running on your machines. You got nothing to worry about, because deny by default, permit by exception. But the interesting thing that's happened over the intervening period is that now it's gone from, we absolutely do not want agentic AI of any description to be running our computers, to we are under pressure to allow agentic AI to run on our computers, but we want it to run safely. And as I said, that's where ring fencing very much comes into its own, because we can say, look, I want Claude to be able to run. It's going to call Bash, it's going to call Git, it's going to call these 5 or 6 other applications, but none of those, for example, should be allowed to access my files. There is a limited number of places I want them to be able to go on the internet, and so on. So ring fencing, basically, it's really interesting, because it's like the world has come back around to the point where default deny and zero trust and permit by exception continues to make more sense than anything else.
If a business owner listening today could take just 1 or 2 steps in the next 30 days to dramatically reduce their risk, what would you tell them to prioritize?
What would I tell them to prioritize? I mean, there's a number of different ways that you can ask this question. I mean, the other question is, I'm interested in zero trust. I want to start implementing zero trust. What should I do? And I mean, look, we all know you can't just, it's not a product. It's not something you can go out and buy. You can't say, I'm going to get some zero trust today and go out and buy it off the shelf. It's effectively a journey. It's, where do you start? And realistically, the best advice you can give anyone is to start somewhere. You know what I mean? It's no point in just getting overwhelmed and going, well, look, there's too much of this, it's too complicated, it's too difficult, it's not going to happen. Because realistically, again, it's only a matter of time. If you don't do something, that something bad will happen. So starting somewhere is the best piece of advice I can give somebody. I mean, in terms of what we do, one of the most interesting things is, so when you basically deploy ThreatLocker to any environment, one of the byproducts is we're going to give you a list of everything that's in your environment, everything that's running in your machines right now. And one of the bits that I enjoy most about this is there's always a surprise there. There's always something that somebody didn't know was running on their machines that they now do because ThreatLocker was deployed. So like, I can give you any number of different examples. I was working with a customer who, they wanted us to show everything that was bad. And I mean, realistically, we don't really do good or bad. We're not antivirus. We're not, EDR. We're not going to go looking for bad things per se. So what I did instead was I said, look, let's have a look and see how many different remote access tools are running in your environment. Because again, remote access tools are incredibly dangerous in the wrong hands. So, and this wasn't a huge environment. It was only about 200 machines, but we found 6 different remote access tools running, not just sitting around, not just installed, 6 different remote access tools running in that environment. They had LogMeIn, they had AnyDesk, they had, interestingly, the previous MSP's remote access tool was still installed, along with their RMM agent. They obviously didn't offboard them properly. So they had basically the previous MSP's tools were still running on their machines.
Disaster.
Unbelievable. But the really interesting thing was almost 20% of the machines, so like 40 of the machines in this 200-seat organization were running TeamViewer. Now, the MSP did not use TeamViewer, okay? The organization did not use TeamViewer, but it was running on 20% of the machines in their environment. And look, we all know how it happens, which is at some point in the far distant past, some third party wants to give support and piece of software and said, hey, would you install TeamViewer in your machine so I can get in? The user does it, and it sits there forever, forgotten about as a potential way into the network. And look, we all know one of the things about TeamViewer is if you click on TeamViewer, it's going to ask you to log in. If you can't log in, it's going to ask you to sign up. And some unsuspecting user will literally just put in their, oh, this is my usual username, my username password, the same thing that they're using on 15 other websites. And then one of those 15 other websites get breached and all of a sudden somebody's into the team viewer. I mean, one of my, and I hate using words like favorite about cyber attacks, but I do have a few favorite cyber attacks, one of which was actually on a water treatment facility here in Florida. Now, when I think about this, all I have in my head is Homer Simpson, okay? But basically what happened was, and this was described in the press as an advanced cyber attack, okay? But basically, some dude was sitting looking at his computer in a water treatment facility, and he noticed the chemicals being adjusted on the screen, the mouse moving and the chemicals being adjusted on the screen. You can look this up, it's true, on the screen in front of him. Now, in this case, they managed to stop it because, I mean, it literally would have killed people. And that's the serious side of it. But if they didn't stop this from happening, it would have killed people. But he noticed, he stopped it. Anyway, turns out this advanced cyber attack was literally somebody logged in using TeamViewer. Saw a computer in front of them and started messing around with the software that was on the screen. So as I said, that's where the Homer Simpson in my head in this case comes from. But again, there's so many different examples of that. My other favorite, and again, I hate using the word favorite for cyber attacks, but this was one in a casino in Vegas, not the big one most recently, but one a little while ago. And the source of the intrusion basically was a smart heater in a fish tank. So they had
I remember that one.
A smart heater in a fish tank was basically where the attackers got access to that environment. But I mean, there's so many different examples. But as I said, it starts with visibility. It starts with knowing what's out there. What software can users run right now? How many different Chrome extensions am I running on my machine? What does normal network traffic look like? Have I had failed RDP logons on my servers in the last 30 days? That's the kind of information that's really important before you start building out security, because you can't fix a problem if you don't know there's a problem exists. You have to establish a baseline. You have to say, right, my environment might be a mess right now, but I don't want it to get worse. So let's just stop it getting any worse and then start making it better.
Very good. So, Rob, that was the end of my list of questions that I had for you prepared.
Okay.
So I do just want to say that ever since we started working with you guys, things have gotten a lot better for us.
Fantastic.
The support that you guys provide, the onboarding, the ongoing support, the way the product just works very well is great. I couldn't imagine working with a better team.
Oh, that's amazing. Really good feedback, and thank you. No, the support thing is really important to us. And again, having been once in your shoes, I know the difference between good support and bad support. I mean, anybody who's ever logged an urgent ticket with Microsoft knows exactly what I'm talking about, which is somebody gets back to you 3 days later going, is that still a problem? Yes, it is still a problem. We have an average 60 seconds or less response time for the cyber hero team, the support.
I can attest to that.
And it's something that you have no idea how seriously we take it. So a brief story. There is an urban myth or a legend about our CEO, Danny, that he used to have an alarm that went off in his house if a chat went over 60 seconds, and he'd be on the phone basically to support going, why the hell has this chat gone over 60 seconds? I'm here to tell you that is not an urban myth. That is not a legend. He did actually have an alarm that went off in his house if a chat went over 60 seconds. That is how seriously we take this. And again, the likes of this comes from the top down. It's his attention to detail. It's his, it being this important to him filters all the way down through the company. But yeah, it's something we take extremely seriously. I mean, look, you don't have time to wait with cybersecurity. If something's going down, if something's going on, if something's trying to happen, you need somebody to help you immediately. It's no good logging a ticket. It's no good having a chat with an AI bot for 15 minutes before you're let speak to a human being. So yeah, our 60 seconds or less is, and by the way, a human being you will speak to who very much wants to help you fix your problem.
Yes, one thing I learned early on in this business is that your vendors can make you or break you. Because I mean, we're IT administrators. We do management, we do risk, we do security, we do all that stuff, but we don't make any of these tools. All we do is we go out and try to find the best tools we can. And if you sign a deal with a bad vendor it's gonna ruin a good portion of your business.
Absolutely, it can ruin relationships.
And
Um,
what
uh,
you're describing, that's coming down from the top, that we're doing with the alarm and everything. I mean, that's a heck of a thing to
mm,
really ingrain in the culture of an organization,
yeah,
and it really shows. It really comes forward whenever I'm working with my sales guy about looking at new products, Sean, or if I'm working with Miguel over there doing some technical stuff. Great team.
yeah. No, as I said, I really appreciate that. Really appreciate that feedback. Um, Look, at the end of the day, same with all of our MSPs, it's a partnership. You know what I mean? Like, you guys need to depend on us, and we are here for that. We are up for that. It is basically why we're in business.
Any any other, well, not that you haven't already dropped tons of pearls of wisdom on us, but is there anything you can leave us with um, that
Sure.
might give us something to think about?
Yeah, well, no, well, I mean, it would be remiss of me not to mention. So we tend to announce new products every year. So we've an event we do here in Orlando every February, March, generally speaking, which is called Zero Trust World. And every Zero Trust World, we tend to have new products that we like to tell people about and share with people. So this year we released two, and at least one of which I think pretty much everybody should be very interested in. But the first is ZTNA, or ZTNA in my parlance, but you'll notice I translated there for you to ZTNA. And look, everybody pretty much should know what that is anyway, which is, again, securely giving remote access to environments. I mean, we've been banging the drum of, well, I'm sorry, speaking of pearls of wisdom, if you're using a VPN, if your customers are using VPN, close it right now, today. Okay, probably the most common attack vector that we've seen, the most common thing that we've seen is VPNs being compromised, whether it be compromised credentials or vulnerabilities in firewalls. I mean, some of the firewalls these days, you sneeze in the general vicinity of it and a 0 day is going to fall out. So if you have a VPN, or if your customers have a VPN, you are massively exposed. Close it right now. Now, for a long time, we've been banging this drum, and people would say to us, well, what's the alternative? What's the solution? How can we do this? And we were like, we don't really have an answer. Now we do. So ZTNA or CTNA, basically built into the same agent, managed from the same portal, same everything, ethos, agent, portal, bill, basically. So that's number one. Number two, and this is the one that I'm particularly interested in, because I think this really does have, I mean, not everybody has remote staff, not everybody has a need for ZTNA. One thing that everybody has a need for is being able to secure cloud resources. So we introduced a product called Zero Trust Cloud Access. Now, the idea of this is, I've got a agent that runs on my phone. I've got something obviously that runs on all my computers, my Windows machine, my Mac, my Linux machines, my Linux boxes. Everything basically has an agent. So what we do with traffic for particular services, so say Office 365, for example, is anything that is for Office 365 will basically get brokered or routed through our infrastructure. So what you can do with conditional access in Office 365 is you can say, I only want to allow connections to our Office 365 from these IP addresses. So instead of the entire internet being able to connect, and, stolen tokens being a major issue, or phishing being a major problem. I mean, we had a couple of our salespeople got phished last year. Now, thankfully, when they got phished, the attackers then proceeded to do the things that attackers usually do, which is they set up forwarding rules, and then those forwarding rules being set up triggered our MDR, and our MDR managed to get it shut down, and so on and so forth. But again, the scary thing is, what would have happened if the attackers had not done the things that attackers usually do? We would never known about that. They could be still in right now. Well, technically they can't, because we're using our ZTCA product. The other thing is, we actually did a targeted campaign, a phishing campaign, a red team campaign against our solutions engineers. Now, our solutions engineers are the best trained, best educated, most security conscious people in this building, right? They are basically the A team for us of cybersecurity engineers. 5 of our engineers fell for this phishing exercise. Now, it was really well done. Granted, we actually used AI to generate it, or to help create it. So we said to ChatGPT, look, if I wanted to do a training exercise for our solutions engineers about phishing, what would a phishing email look like? And it gave us an incredible email. It was basically from the lady who organizes Zero Trust World. So incredibly believable as to who it was from. It was about Zero Trust World, which was just around the corner. And it basically said, look, you guys are all doing presentations at Zero Trust World. Here's a SharePoint link with the presentations. Would you just check them out and make sure they're okay? Incredibly believable. But 5 of our solutions engineers fell for it, gave their credentials away, and approved an MFA prompt. I mean, it's terrifying, but again, shows how easy it happens. So ZTCA solves that problem because our Office 365 right now is locked down so that only specific IP addresses can connect. So I could literally give you my username and password right now. You could log in. I could approve a multi-factor request. You still won't be able to access our Office 365 because it's locked down to only specific IP addresses. And it's not just Office 365. That's the cool thing about it. You can do it for G Suite. You can do it for Salesforce. You can do it for basically any SaaS service that's out there that allows you to restrict access by IP address. So that's the thing that I'm most excited about right now because all of our clients need this. I am under no doubt all of our clients need it. Pretty much every business that's out there needs this because phishing happens for a reason. It's because it's successful. It's because it's valuable. It's because it works. I mean, if it didn't work, if MFA was the answer, I mean, how long is it now since Microsoft rolled out MFA as being a requirement? I think it's a couple of years now, if I'm not much mistaken. But I mean, if MFA was the answer,
I didn't realize that they mandated it yet.
I thought they did. Now, again, it's been a while since I've been in that particular area, but I thought they did. Maybe they didn't. It's certain. Well, either way, it's harder to not have MFA than to have MFA in this day and age. But the fact is, phishing still happens. They do it for a reason, which is it is successful. It works. So again, given that scenario, given that backdrop, you need to do something to protect your cloud resources. And I can't think of anything better than saying, well, look, block the entire internet from accessing our Office 365, except connections which are brokered via this IP address or these IP addresses. So there you go. Pearls of wisdom.
We got them. Cool. Rob, it's really been great talking with you today. Appreciate you taking the time. You are a true wealth of experience and information, and I really am enjoying my relationship with ThreatLocker. I'm looking forward to a bright future with you guys.
Fantastic, Chris. Thank you so much. Pleasure.